so this all was a bit sudden, and I prepared a document for Lisa recently, so I was just trying to find it to remind myself of what we talked about so far.
Yeah. You sent it on the 9th of December, Michelle.
Yeah, I can't find it in my inbox. Look, if you have
Okay,
it, I would appreciate you sending it to me again.
I will send it to you now.
It's the mystery. I've had a new laptop just you know in the last few weeks, and I think yeah, that's my explanation anyway. Um,
Yeah.
so the whole the reason why this all started, by the way, Steve, is because we are trying to integrate at the moment, as the drills were deployed 7 years ago. It was a different system sold by a different company called APS. Okay,
Yeah.
so the first few years of its life, you had the APS system on one side, you had the Wenco system on the other side, and you had an interface between the two. Um, and as technology has progressed, and mostly because Wenco actually bought APS and integrated their software within the fold, so we now want to integrate the drill system into the Wenco system, into the proper FMS system. So you've only got the one.
Yeah.
Okay. And already we made changes to the servers, and that allowed to IT to recover space, for example, on the cluster by removing the drill server that used to exist. We no longer need, but now we need to integrate the client side, which is the equipment side of things, and the onboard hardware is not up to it, and for several reasons. And so we've been um, talking about this, with Jared on site. So you need to kind of upgrade that hardware one way or another. But the issue as well is that hardware that is currently on the drill is an oddball, as I said, as you already know, as you said before, because it was installed under a different system essentially, and not exactly the hardware that we use normally for Wenco. And being an oddball has its own um, issues in the fact that that means they have to carry another spare for the drill, which is unrelated to every other piece of hardware they have for Wenco on site. So you've got this situation where you've got this hardware for the drill, it only fits the drill, and you can't use it anywhere else. Whereas the hardware we propose will fit any piece of high precision equipment, which is the dozers, the drills, the
Yeah.
excavator, and so forth. Okay, and the scrapers and the like. So there is a gain, I guess, on that side of things. The other thing is that the new hardware platform will support Windows 10. Um, and what that means, in terms of security and reliability, I guess you've got a new operating system. I know that on some sites where I go to, the current platform for some of the Wenco, and you still got a lot of that even on the main FMS, is Windows 7, and a lot of customers are saying no, they don't want to touch Windows 7 anymore. It's just too old. So to move the drills to Windows 10 would be another bonus point of this whole thing.
And we already have the tracks running on Windows 10.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. That's right. Or any new hardware that we've installed on the excavators and the stuff runs with the Windows IoT, they call it, actually, image, which is much more modern and secure. I know.
Yeah, I read the list of advantages, I guess, and I understand them, and it will make sense. That's fine. It's the issue is for me in terms of translating it to two more of a numerical type of analysis to generate an incremental benefit, I guess.
Yeah,
to understand if there's any cost implications of if we said no, we're not spending any money. How would things proceed? I don't really understand what we currently have in terms of functionality compared to what the new system will give us. So there's some advantages there that may translate to, like I know from the Downer guys, I think they're saying, well, they do manual entry and that costs, like an hour a day for the drill and blast engineer, for instance. In terms of the maintainability, when something's obsolete, what normally happens, I think, or my experience previously is that, okay, it won't be part of a normal service agreement, but, you know, if we had to source a part or cannibalize something else, or do you suffer more outages? Do you, is it, or does it just die and we lose capability that we currently have? So it's just trying to sort of articulate, okay, in the do nothing case, what would life be like? How do we describe the situation so that we can say, okay, you know, what would the world look like if we just stayed as we are?
I'm probably not the one to ask for that. I mean, you'd have to ask your drill and blast engineers, you know, what is important to them, whether they can run the drills without Wenco or they prefer to have it with Wenco. Obviously, the fact that they bought the system in the first place all these years ago would suggest to me that they really feel they need it. But I'm not a user of the system, obviously, so I'm being on the vendor side, I'm naturally biased. You know, of course, you need the system for sure. But
are you able to sort of maybe contrast the functionality that with the new integrated solution with how we currently have?
Well, the main thing would be the ability to move forward in software version in the future. Okay. Yep. Right now, the difference of functionality you will gain on the day will be the integration in the Wenco system, which means that the user interface in the database system will be exactly the same as every other piece of equipment on site. So the operators will interact with exactly the same software that they have in the truck, in the excavator, and everything else.
Yep.
So from the point of view of, for example, capturing information back and forth between the equipment, that makes it a lot easier. They don't have to have specific training just for that other hardware and that other stuff. You know. The other advantage is the new system will gain the ability to have OEM and interaction. So interaction with the onboard drill system to gain asset health information or engineers, fuel levels, that sort of thing, which currently they do manually, I'm sure, I would expect. But in the case of the system they currently have, it would have to be a paper trail all the way from the pit into the office. Whereas every other thing, you know, every other system, the normal Wenco system, you can enter it in the screen manually at worst, or you can get it automatically from the machine at best. And that depends on the capability of the machine. I know your Caterpillar drill definitely will be able to do that. The other one, to be honest, I don't know. We'll see once we've got a system in. But so, worst case scenario, you'll be able to enter it on the screen, which you can't.
Yeah. So Michel, just one question. How do we record depth of the holes now? Is that something that the system is picking up automatically, or is it manually entered?
That will not change. Yeah, that functionality will not be different. Yeah.
Okay.
Now that the drilling functionality right now will not be different, but a year from now, 2 years from now, if there are any big functional change to the drill software, then obviously you wouldn't be able to gain those. Yeah. So yeah, to me the main advantage is that the level of stock and maintenance and things like that, and the ability to move forward in the software versions and have a drill system that's integrated with Wenco.
Okay.
Rather than having two systems, different systems.
So in terms of the integration with Wenco, Michel, the biggest benefit would be that the database would be in the same system. So
yep, and mostly from the point of view of the operator, I think. Like at the moment, and I'm not sure it happened. To be fair, I don't know the situation with your drill operators, but I know, for example, at Maules Creek, there was one problem they had where they had to have operators that had, they could only use operators that were trained in that system. They had to be specifically trained. It was an add-on in the cost of training, obviously, and the restriction on who they can actually put into a drill, because the system was different from everything else. Yeah. So that which we've now resolved there, but 2 years ago.
The current technology records the operated hours and all that sort of stuff, and the drill meters and all that. That would all end up in the Wenco database already from the existing system.
It does for an interface. That's right.
Yeah.
That's for there's that interface I talked about. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is more or less, yeah, it's not that with a couple of drills, to be honest, it's been fairly reliable. It does seem to, once you have more drills than that, it does seem to be a little bit more reliability. But
so in terms of once Wenco discontinue formal support, so for that old system, how
yeah,
if we kept it, I mean, what would happen?
well, as I said, you will basically yeah, keep going as you are until something dies, I suppose. So critically, I guess, would be that you may have a drill out of commission. So you'd have to really ask the engineer, I think, whether they can put up with it. Normally not. Like from a support perspective, when a drill system is down, it's a big thing, because they have to have several men in the field to actually replace the system. With the system, the driller can actually operate automatically and find by GPS the exact position of its hole. If they don't have that, they have to have surveyors in the field putting flags in places over the whole drill pattern, and that's, I think, quite expensive. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, but the current system already has that capability. It will load the patterns up, as I understand it.
That's right. Yep.
Through the dispatchers or directly into the system, and then the current drills position themselves and drill the holes to plan, and the depths are recorded. I'm not sure what information or feedback do the operators get direct feedback as they drill the hole on various things.
Yeah, I mean, I can't make things up. I mean, definitely that part of the functionality as it is will remain largely unchanged. I can't say otherwise.
Yeah. So, Michel, you mentioned before that the new system will capture OEM information.
Correct.
So, with that OEM information, could be like pool and all those things coming from the machine. Can we use that information later on to maybe build up a hardness model of the material we are drilling? Because
what's the interface? So I'm trying to remember the Caterpillar drill. It's not Vulcan. It's I was looking at it this morning.
correct.
Anyway, yes, there is actually a lot of information that you can obtain from that OEM interface. Yes, definitely. And like we're talking about acetal for Meandu, of course, that be the other advantage. You could then include that drill in your acetal. Yeah, those drilling your acetal, which currently you can't. So there is that advantage here as well.
So is the real difference in? I understand the logical description that you've made about the advantages, and everyone, I think, will be happy that getting to the latest system, it makes sense, all makes common sense. To translate this to sort of an MPV, you've got to we all have to try and say, well, in the do nothing case, what does the world look like from a cost capability? Or our ability to drill accurately, is that compromised? Is the system become less reliable? Would the costs increase of supporting the machine? Would we need specific carry more parts, like you said? If you can't get the parts, does the system break down and become less reliable, or we have outages of the system?
We already had a bit of an issue like that recently, where there was a cable that actually was broken, and we could not get a cable. We ended up having to make a cable, and they're very specialized cables, and basically it took, I don't know, like 10 days, before we could get that cable made. I think it was about in that order. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of of some of the implication. Eventually, I mean, it's not that you'll move to the new system eventually because the old system will die, and computers they die.
Yeah.
It's not, as I say, they are nearing the end of their useful life anyway. It's a pretty normal cycle to replace a computer every 5 years. Um, in fact, in some IT department, you'd have to ask your IT department. It's probably even more often than that, but
Mm.
yeah, and they'll eventually die, and you'll eventually, so you can plan the transition, or eventually something will die. You won't be able to replace it. You'll have to. The only replacement we have, is the new version for that.
Mm.
So it's only a matter of time, I guess. But I understand that from your point of view, you need to be able to to justify the cost, and there are things as well in regards to the cost. I can't like what is the cost of carrying a spare part computer um, in your in your parts department. I really can't tell what that is. I mean, as versus having one that fits them all. There's a cost there, but I couldn't tell you what that is. Maybe the parts people might be, would
Yeah.
maybe able to quantify that. It's all so they've bought 1,000 cuts, I guess. It's just a little bit here, a little bit there, and I know the OEM normally has a lot of value as well. We certainly see, you know, it's asset health being the thing that it is. There's normally a lot of value in that for a lot of sites, but again, I can't quantify that for you as to how much
Yeah.
how much is that worth to you. It's it's a personal thing. It's a um, everybody's going to have a different answer for that, I would say, but the maintenance people would probably think it's gold. Um,
Mm.
I know they spend a lot of money in the past, for example, just to obtain engineers on the Komatsus. They spend like 10 or $1,000 per truck just to be able to update the contracts on them to get just the engineers some years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it's always a tricky one with technology projects because it all makes such common sense. Everyone agrees with it. Then when you're forced to put dollars and cents on the table to say, "Oh, what is the actual benefit?" and
Mhm.
compared to a do nothing case, it becomes tricky. So I guess
Yeah.
we have two choices. I guess this is for you to think about, Julio. Uh, to link it to. I don't think it's quite correct to say if we don't do this, we would lose more coal. Uh,
No.
even though that might be true, it
Mhm.
would be more about reliability. There would be outages.
Oh,
Be
and
all
that's not
sorts
a
of
question I
costs.
could answer. I say I'm not a mining engineer. You'd really have to ask them what how critical the system is to them. In all fairness, I couldn't answer that.
Yeah,
But I do know that the process. If the drill system goes down, then they have to resort to manpower, and it's a big thing for them, and there'll be a cost there. So I think
yeah,
the system and the drills being at the beginning of the feed
mm,
of production, I guess, because if you don't have drills, you can't blast, you can't get coal, So they're probably fairly critical machines, as far as I know, in
yeah.
that respect.
I guess the reality is, though, all apart from obviously with survey control, um, which would only be when the system was down or not working, pending these repairs and
Mhm.
securing or making up cables and securing obsolete parts that
Mm.
might be a problem. And I guess, before we had dispatch systems, that was the way the world used to work. And whether or not we're much better than that, obviously we do, it saves a lot of labour and these sorts of things.
Mhm.
So maybe there's two ways we can go. It's either if we can say that the system is likely to fail, so without maintaining it, we would need survey hours, we would need all this sort of manual labour type stuff, and that would be a changing cost.
Mm. Oh,
Or
plus having the manpower, I think you just do not have the dedicated people that could do. They might be able to step in for a short period of time,
yeah,
when we are waiting for parts. But I think in the longer term, it would become prohibitively expensive to have surveyors just to do those tasks.
yeah,
Uh, I'm sure, yeah, your engineers would confirm that.
Yeah. It's just I was thinking that the new system would give us greater capability, so I was going to link it to overall performance in terms of more accurate, greater accuracy, consistency of drilling, and compliance to plan. So the reporting and integrated reporting and feedback loop would be probably beneficial in terms of the instant feedback that the drillers would get.
It will give you more reliable information in the accountability of the operator time, because writing differently, like when you go for an interface, you do lose things along the way. Actually, something just got into my mind, but to be fair, same thing. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to verify that. But there is another issue through the interface. We do lose some information with regards what they call the rate of
penetration rate.
Rate of penetration. That's right. That is one thing that gets lost in that process, and I think the ROP. That's the one. The ROP. Now, again, what is the value of that to the business? It's hard for me to answer that. Normally, yeah, but it is with anybody, engineers especially. The more once you have something, you absolutely don't want to give it back. But how bad is it not having it? Again, I don't know. You'd have to ask them for sure.
So it sounds to me, Julio, like it's probably more of a cost and reliability issue to keep the old system than losing our ability, because we wouldn't accept additional coal loss. We would incur costs to supplement the reliability and the lack of information with manual processes, I think.
If I may ask, Julio, at the moment, for example, you're doing some hardware refresh on the trucks, and we've done some hardware refresh on some of the diggers as well, because again, the Octagon, the computers they had on board were like 7 years old, and towards the end of, definitely past the end of their life actually, plus the ability to do to install the asset health on them. How different is it?
So it's a bit.
Like I thought the drills, in fact, had a bit more. They had that because you'll have the ability to have asset health in, and then you'd have this sort of rationalization of your spare parts and on top of it. So I thought they were actually offering.
So it means that the hardware that we are fitting on the drills will be the same hardware that we are fitting on the diggers.
Correct.
So
Trax 10.
So how with the additional money we're spending on upgrading the trucks and things like that, how do we justify that, Julio?
Well, it was because they're the same reasoning. The hardware that we had installed on all the trucks were obsolete already. 7 years. It's been installed 7 years, and when we upgraded the wireless network to Ryan, so the bottleneck process was not communication anymore. So that's when we realized that the hardware installed on the trucks was not actually taking advantage of the new network.
I understand the logic, but how did you justify the expenditure?
Yeah, it was very much thinking on the next step, which is installing the Ready Line, which is the kind of machine health monitoring system. So we needed to have that hardware upgraded to move into an online monitoring system.
But did you estimate an NPV benefit for that sort of thing?
No,
logic.
No, it was just logic. No, we didn't actually estimate any NPV.
And that was okay. I mean, that was accepted by Jacob. So I think probably it's just probably one of those funny ones where maybe trying to develop an MPV benefit is not the right thing. It's like there are lots of logical, good, sound business reasons why we want to do this, but to put one number to say this is the benefit because we need another surveyor or because we need this. It's like, it takes an extra hour a day for the drill and blast engineer to manually enter data. So what? He works an extra hour, you don't pay him anymore. It's this problem whereby incremental people hours are hard to value. You end up with probably a less reliable system. You end up with longer outages, maybe a bit of survey to supplement that, maybe more risk in terms of coal loss because we lose some integrity of information.
Yeah.
The benefits are spread wide across. I think that's a bit of a problematic thing. I say even like in your workshop, the people who look after spare parts, just the ability to have a pool of hardware that is exactly the same to fit all the types of machines. It's got to have some value, but how do you quantify that? It's very hard.
One approach I've used for this before is to do sensitivity analysis. So, for instance, I remember when we put the first fleet management system in at Goonyella, this is 20 years ago. It wasn't Wenco, unfortunately. But the way that I did that was just to say that I've done the sensitivity analysis, and all we have to do is improve productivity by 2%, 3%, something really, really small, and the system paid for itself in 12 months. Logic that I used was that,
ROI.
it's more, but using sensitivity, so that instead of saying this is the MPV of the system, it was like this is a really good idea, and so basically, I guess with the drills, it's like saying, well, we have coal recovery at risk, we have we have productivity at risk, we have reliability at risk, and we could maybe do some sensitivity that says, we'd only have to lose 0.5% productivity and the thing's paid for itself, or or not lose 0.5%, or not lose 0.1% coal loss, and
Well, yeah, I mean, what's the cost per hour or per day to run the drill without the system? I suppose. What's the added cost? I'm sure it's fairly tangible, that one. There might even be a.
Sorry.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should just maybe follow the same approach. Like base the reasoning on the fact that the hardware is already obsolete and we have to replace it. If we want to keep the functionality that we have now, we have to replace it.
Yeah, and stress that this is like maintaining this sort of integrity of our drilling and compliance to plan and this sort of stuff. Is a key prerequisite, I guess, for improving coal recovery, getting our blast results the way we want them, and just, I mean, that's an enormous lever on our costs, but it's very hard to say, well, exactly how much do you lose if you go manual.
Yeah, and also the standardization of hardware spare parts. Yes.
Yeah,
the same power.
I mean, I know deep down that as the system ages, that what you've got ages, it will become less and less reliable. Not being able to keep it up to date with patching of software and software upgrades will make it even less functional and less. But I can't quantify that easily either because I don't know what the future holds. How much less reliable? I can't say.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, I drive an old Pajero from 1990, because and I keep thinking I'm going to drive this car to the dump one day, but it just doesn't want to die, So.
That's why you still got it. You see, you can't justify to your wife that you need to
I
replace
can't justify it. I mean, I do 4,000 k's a year in the machine just to take the dinghy
Yeah.
to the river and put the
Yeah.
crab pots in the back. You know,
Much
so
as you tried to create an MPV to justify to your wife why you want all the money.
and I am actually trying to convince my wife. I do want to buy a new car, but yes, that's exactly what happens every time. She says, "What for?" You know,
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
so maybe your drill will be like my old car. Maybe it'll keep going forever. But realistically, the cost of not having a drill, I think you certainly would be able to get an answer from Will. Wilhelm will be able to give you a pretty good answer on that one, I would say, because he's quite specialized in that area. He knows it well.
Just that I think everybody's on holiday. I'd sort of like to hoping to get a draft sort of basically wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like not knowing the system, I know like the added functionality of the ability of using MDT5 and having your statuses, the security aspect, like they use on the rest of the fleet, they use what do you call it, fatigue messages and things like that. Okay, which they can't do with the drills because they haven't got the right Wenco system, part of the system on board. There's all sorts of little things like that. I say it's a death by 1,000 cuts. There's all these little bits that the drills can't do.
Yeah, I mean, it all adds to health and safety, maintainability, equipment health, platform. It's reliability, accuracy. It's all those sorts of things. It's about. They all make sense logically.
Performance as well. I mean, definitely the new hardware platform is, offers a lot more performance and more security, which IT would be happy to have as well.
So if you could do me a favour, Michelle, and think of any of I've seen your email that you sent to Lisa before. If there are any other specific benefits or advantages that you can think of, then maybe just do a bit of brainstorming and just send me everything you can think of, and I'll try and summarise all of that into a few key sort of points that say these are the benefits of the project. Bang, 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 and then I guess I might do a bit of sensitivity analysis, Julio, just so that you can comment on the value at risk, I guess.
Yeah.
Rather than having an MPV, and write it up that way as more of a logical one, like you've done before.
Yeah.
And if when Jacob reviews it, he sort of says, no, I need to estimate something more tangible in terms of cost benefit type thing, then we can update that, I guess.
Yep. That's a good approach.
All right.
Excellent.
Okay. Yep. Now I've taken some notes. For example, the fatigue thing. I just thought of it now. I don't think I thought about it the other day when I was doing that document.
With the manual data entry that was talked about previously in Alex's, Alex has obviously got some information from Sam, from the drill and blast guys, Downer. And he sort of said there's about 1 hour a day of manual data entry. I don't really quite understand that, because if the data is in the system, is it just a lag, or is it just not available when they need it?
I'm not sure what he's entering, to be honest. I'd have to know more on that one too.
Well, they take the information, and load it into Blast Logic.
That's the blast simulation.
Yeah, so there's a blast design package called Blast Logic.
Yep, I've seen that. Yeah.
We have the design. The design gets loaded to the drill. The holes get drilled. The actual as-drilled data then needs to be input into Blast Logic.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that I know when I installed a Caterpillar system at a mine in central Queensland, one of the interfaces that we developed was between the Caterpillar, the Wenco equivalent system, the onboard system,
CAT terrain,
loading data directly from the Wenco database, creating an interface with Blast Logic, and loading the as drilled holes, so the exact location, the depth of each hole, all that sort of information into so they're the actual data into Blast Logic seamlessly. And it just used to sort of a refresh every hour or two, I think, and just keep. So that would come via the Wenco database. But I'd imagine that's already possible because the individual hole, as drilled hole data should be already recorded in Wenco, I think.
Yep, and as much as I'd like to say, oh, look, it's got no bearing on that conversation, like you're quite right. It's possible regardless of what we do to the drill themselves, because that's a back end, that's a server thing. So
yeah.
Oh, okay, now they've never said anything about that. I didn't realize that they were entering that data backwards into Blast Logic. Yeah.
Well, again, I'm not sure whether it's all the data or whether it's just to sort of check it manually or I don't know, check it against the plan. I know they have trouble reconciling actual and plan.
Yep, okay. Well, that could be another conversation entirely about something else, about this. Really, you could take a note of that because it might be able to help them out.
But if there are some other functionality differences between the upgraded system and the current one, that would be good to understand what they are. Whether they matter or not, we can discuss later. But if you could maybe just sort of summarize if there are any.
Yeah, I mean the Wenco drill software installed on the drill, the drilling interface is version 1.2.4, and even with the new thing, it will only be version 1.2.6. There isn't really a huge difference right now. But you are, stuck with that version. So in a year or 2 years from now, I'm sure they will diverge. But by how much, I don't know. What is Wenco going to introduce in 6 months or a year's time? I really don't know. And even if we do, if we hear rumors of this or that, I mean, I couldn't talk about it anyway because it's just that we don't. Till something's.
Yeah, and again, it all makes very logical, common sense, and everyone, I guess, knows that does make sense. Whether or not the logic is okay, Julio, for the business case, or whether we need to generate an incremental MPV, which makes it difficult because of the base case, quantifying exact difference is difficult.
Okay, yeah. So let me get in touch with Sam. I will see if he's available maybe for half an hour and understand a bit more maybe what's the operational changes or what's he doing now that will change now that we install this system from the operational point of view, if there is any.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been useful.
Okay. Yes. I can only say what it is. But there's no big. Like to me, as knowing the system, the added functionality of being able to using MDT4 is great, and I'm sure like on site they'll definitely that will add value to the system to them, but it's not okay. But yeah, I've put a few notes and I've got this. There was an email. I thought I'd created the document for some reason, Rudy. I was looking for an attachment.
No, it was just
a flat email. Yeah, sorry.
There's a table in the email.
Yeah, that's right. I've got it.
Comparison stuff.
Yeah, because I was pretty busy. Yeah, something I did fairly quick, to be fair. Okay.
I think in the quote there might be this table as well, or something similar. Right? There is a document with this sort of comparison information in as well, I think.
Yeah, in fact,
it's part of the quotation document, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have more photos, because maybe what this doesn't explain very well is that the little screen that you're looking at the moment, there are two components. We're replacing two components with one, by the way. That's probably not very clear, because the Astrum 3 is another box altogether, and that's that's very end of life. That's definitely past its end of life, but it's past its use by date. That one. So the new system actually replaces both boxes, both pieces of
It would be
hardware.
just the screen that will replace the whole thing. Yeah.
No, it's like the typical Winco system. So it's the octagon in the screen. It's like a computer,
Okay.
your laptop.
Yeah.
You got a screen of the computer.
Yeah.
But that replaces the GNSS or the GPS receiver. Actually, of course, why didn't I think of that either? And I did say it in there. Again, might not be very clear, but from a precision perspective, the old system only used GPS, whereas the new system is capable of using GNSS, which is all the other the Beidou and GLONASS and Now,
Does that give you improved precision?
it does give you more precision, but I'm not a driller. How important that is for them? It will actually be very useful to them when they are in a bad position, because you're going to have a much bigger constellation of satellites. So if you're drilling, for example, against close to a high wall, you may be in a position where you don't see the GPS constellation, and those are probably issues that they face from time to time. Again, you'd have to ask the engineers, but and because you're only using the GPS constellation, I know recently in the west, in the super pit in Kalgoorlie, we actually it wasn't on drills, but was on excavators, where we actually had to deploy some new hardware with that GLONASS, because they were having that specific issue, being a 600-meter deep hole. There were times of the day they just couldn't see enough satellites, and they just were totally losing the positioning. Yeah. But yeah, the problem with these kinds of things, yes, it's an improvement. It's great. How does it translate on the ground can be quite specific to the mine site. There might be mine site like where it's all flat and they've got good GPS, satellite visibility anyway. They probably wouldn't notice it so much. If you got a big deep hole, then it becomes worse. It depends where you drill at the time. Yeah. But it's definitely there is that, and I did put that in there. Looking back at my email.
Yeah, well, like I say, I think there's quite a solid set of logical arguments why this is a sensible thing to do, and I think I've got most of that
it's
understanding.
Big step up in technology, I guess, is one thing. But how do you put a cost to that? That's
the challenging part.
That's the challenging part. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yep. I just saw that as I was reading my own email. I should. All right.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Catch you later. Bye.
Okay.